Greetings, system failure listeners. Nate here, Brian there, spinning early once again this week. Brian, how are you doing on a Tuesday night?
I'm pretty good. I feel like I've scarcely been away from the studio here on Congress Street in Portland, Maine.
It does seem like we were just here, spending a few minutes ago, but there's just so much to talk about that we can definitely continue on for an hour unabated here with no problem and probably much more. Whoosh. How's your week been going? How's work?
Oh man, how's my week been going? Pretty good. I mean, it's only Tuesday, but I don't know. Let's see. I've been doing the meditations. You gotta meditate, right?
Yes. Yeah, my own meditation practice has been lacking of late. And like, if I don't meditate, I really start to feel like out of control. Like it's the beginning of your day and you have a bunch of stuff to do. And I just feel like if I've been meditating and my mind is organized, I can go through my list of my to-do list like a civilized person. But if I haven't been meditating, my brain's all over the map. My car's all over the road. So, you've been doing some spot of meditating? Feeling better?
Yeah. Well, you got to do Damo Mitchell's Anchoring the Breath Part 2, which I think pimped before on the podcast, but it's on YouTube.
I think we need a refresher.
Well, it's just like a 40-minute meditation. You sit there and think about your breathing. It's funny because the challenge in just sitting there and meditating is like, at least to me anyway, it's like the bodily pain that you feel in your body. Like there's like all this like tightness, right? Do you not feel that when you go to sit down to meditate? I would think you would, because you'd be mowing your wretched back like as much as anyone.
Yeah, but I think my meditation experience is completely different. So let me just let me finish your anecdote, and then I'll give a contrasting one at the end.
Well, I mean, I think the psychosomatic connection is a thing that is real. That people, I guess, seem to have varying levels of understanding of it. You know, shout out my physical therapist, Noah there. He seems to have a great understanding of it. But, yeah, I mean, well, I just think the bodily pain, it's like sort of psychosomatic. I don't know. You got to sit down and feel the things. And, because just as you're breathing, your mind will start to wander, and you'll start thinking about things. And it's like, what kind of things do you start thinking about? It's really hard to just sit there and focus on your breathing, I guess.
Yes.
And I think that, I mean, I've had a couple goes at meditating, and we'll see. I'm on I've done like 2 days in a row, so I'm high on my high horse here.
So 40 minutes today, 40 minutes yesterday.
Well, 40 minutes last night and 40 minutes the night before that.
I see. Okay, so if you were to complete it today, it would be 3 in a row. Gotcha.
I'm very keen for a repeat performance tonight. But yeah, I mean, it's just that like things like ball up in this like in the ether or in some kind of like emotional space, right? And the way to get in tune with it is by sitting there and breathing, and it's the only way to deal with all the madness of so that's certainly like going on Reddit destroys you, but probably many other things too.
Would you describe going on Reddit as the exact opposite of meditating? That's how it feels to me.
I would.
Yeah. Yeah, or any kind of infinite scroll. Any one of those things where, versus having a page of results on page one. Used to be on Google. You'd have your first page of results. You have to click to the second page, and you have to click to the third page. But 10, 15 years ago, the whole internet switched to where you would just then you would never have to go to a next page. The next page and the third page and the fourth page are all loaded. And so anything where you're in one of those infinitely scrolling situations, right? That's where your attention is just scattered and unfocused and undisciplined. So, yeah, that's definitely my perception as well.
People are out of control with their phones, man. I mean, you'll go to the worst sign is people like doing the fireworks on their cell phone. It's just such a disgrace.
Oh, you mean like filming the fireworks?
Yeah, the 4th of July. Yeah, I mean, it's just so pointless.
Well, I can understand having a picture of the fireworks to remind you of the 4th of July that you had that was fun, but if that's how you're going to try to experience it through your phone, then that is a tragedy. I agree.
Or like, at concerts, like everyone's got their phones out and stuff, man. I mean, you just got to enjoy the experience. I mean, our cyborg integration is going extremely questionably so far, is what I'd have to say.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I have an addiction to my phone, or that I'm constantly battling an addiction to my phone. That's more like some days I do a good job not letting my phone dictate what I think about. But if you're tired or run down or preoccupied or emotionally distressed, or if any of your circuits aren't firing 100%, well, then it's back to the phone for a binge on Reddit or some other infinite scroll site. Man.
Well, I think doing the meditation makes it easier not to go on your phone.
Yes.
Like just because the light changed or something, or you're like getting into the elevator. There's just all these moments where you just I anyway like instinctively like reach for my phone and start. It's absolutely crazy.
Oh yeah, you pull up to a stoplight. You're like, maybe this stoplight seems like it can take a minute. Let me just check the headlines on my phone or something. How many times have I done that? That truly is a behavior of the damned. You're right.
Well, I think that meditation is obviously key. There's a reason why people do this. It's really hard to do, to like sit down and like not go on your phone, and it's easy to be distracted by other things. But I think I've got to do the meditation, which maybe last time I started talking about the anchoring the breath, I probably said all these things back then too. But this time, I'm committed, and I'm not going to give it up.
Isn't that ever the way of things? Being in the human experience, trying to maintain a spot of discipline, and it's a never-ending battle. Just one final thought on the meditation front. I don't think that I think much about the mind-body connection in terms of aching or having a sore back or anything, but I do find that I'll oftentimes, especially if I had coffee, at any time recently, I find that if I'm sitting there, I might like shake my leg unconsciously, and then when you start meditating, you're like, why am I shaking my leg? Let me just stop. And there's like a stillness that comes with that. So yeah, I don't know. I just don't think that I focus much on the physical sensation of being in my body so much as you just try to lock all of that out, all of that sense data out. I'm trying to focus elsewhere. And if you've got good focus, you can focus on your breath or some other fleeting thing for longer and longer and longer, and then, like you already said, at the back end of the scale, going on your phone erodes that discipline. So it's interesting that you think so much about the mind-body connection in your meditation.
Well, you do lose your ability to like have control, and it's just way easier if I've been doing the meditation to like not go on like Reddit all day. And just like the Gen Z and millennial problem is like we're lousy with like anxiety and depression, I guess, right?
Yeah.
And like meditation, or some kind of meditation is the key. Well, the problem is that you build up an excess negative energy ball of emotion, right? That is like lingering in your head somewhere, and so only through something like meditation are you going to be able to like down regulate that, or like to digest that ball of emotion, because otherwise just going like the numbing yourself with the doom scrolling just feeds the crazy energy ball, right?
Well, okay, I agree, but I disagree with this idea that meditation is the only solution or remedy or balm for that for that ball of negative energy you built up. Like you said, I do think that being bored is really important, and also important is to put your head on the pillow at night and spend 15, 20 minutes emotionally processing your day, because if you have your phone near your bed, which I always leave my phone in the other room, if you have your phone near your hand, you'll look at that, and instead of processing everything that happened and integrating it into your psyche and experience and whatnot, you put that off for another fun dopamine headline about the upcoming economic collapse on Reddit, and and then you end up that ball gets bigger and bigger like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Well, definitely going to sleep, like sleeping well at night, is a key part of the recipe. So I definitely agree there.
It would seem to me that the point of meditation is to not let the physical pain or the emotional pain to just no longer identify with all of that, and instead focus on the illusory nature of reality. The focus on the fact that the matrix isn't real. That's where my head's at when I do a meditation. So I feel like emotional processing and mental health and physical health are all well and good, and that meditation definitely helps with those things. But in my meditation practice, I'm trying to get outside. I'm trying to leave all that in the rearview mirror. So maybe that's why we're having a little bit different experiences here. We've got a little different goal in mind that we're trying to different summit we're trying to ascend to with this meditation practice.
I don't think that like being like the Matrix, like that the way that Neo's in the Matrix, where you're gonna like unplug from this reality and wake up to a grander thing is like so important. I mean, maybe it is, but there's just like the metaphorical Matrix. Like, I saw on the Reddit, speaking of which,
Speaking of indiscipline,
but the guy who's running to try to replace that oyster farmer who wants to replace our Senator Susan
up here in
Collins.
Maine?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know much about this guy, but I love a challenger to our corrupt incumbents. That's exciting.
Well, he said that, he would be, opposed to anti-LGBT legislation. And so the comment on Reddit, it was like, F you, MAGA. This guy doesn't like hate, the queers or whatever. And so, see, to me, that's like, I don't know, like, what is this guy like imagining that like MAGA is? Or I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's like some, like out in the hills, there's probably like some people who are like trying, like racist and proud of it, or, they're homophobic and proud of it, and like they're trying to stamp out that nonsense. But I mean, there's just unenlightened people in the hills, and that's just kind of the way of it. I don't know, like, I just can't imagine like buying into like the MAGA versus the woke thing. Or, I don't know. People talk about like MAGA, like, I guess there's those people who like have a whole bunch of Trump stickers on their car, and so like, well, congratulations. I'm sure this guy running isn't a front to like that dude, but I mean, man, that's got to be like 5% of people, something like that.
Oh, what? I know what you're saying, but I would think that the Donald Trump supporters, the MAGA people, as you put it, I would think they would be excited for a challenge to aren't they the drain the swamp people? I would think that a challenge to a corrupt incumbent like Maine's own Susan Collins would be just what the doctor ordered if in fact, draining the swamp is your priority, eh?
Well, I think that, like your average MAGA person is our brothers in arms, the QAnoners, who want to see an end to the corrupt government. And so, really, I don't even think that those people are the enemy of the LGBTQers. And I'm sure most of those people just would not like the government to be involved in such things. But anyway, that is like the Matrix, is like getting caught up in all that stuff, or just generally caught up in like, I don't know, the anxiety and chaos of modern life, right?
Yeah. Okay, so there really are two matrices here, at least two. There's the Gnostic matrix, in which reality is some kind of an illusion as perceived by the five senses, right? So there's that you mentioned. Then there's that matrix, and then there's like the matrix of societal attitudes or media conditioning, right? This is the sort of a secondary or lesser matrix, that it just I think I have this I was realizing this about myself. Like I have this fear of being a bigot. Like I don't. Like, in post-World War II America, right, we are defined by this conflict against the Nazis, and that conflict, even though we didn't know about the Holocaust until the liberation of Germany, it really became, in the final analysis, right, the World War II stories about good guy America taking out the Nazis who had turned on some of their own minorities, namely the Jews most obviously, but other minorities too. And the whole idea is that that's antithetical to the American way. And so, I don't know, I always, my biggest fear would be if someone would think that I had held bigotry or intolerance in my heart towards certain demographic groups, that you just wouldn't want to be thought of as that kind of person. That was always my worst nightmare. Brian, does this sound at all familiar to you, or do I sound like a nutter?
Yeah, well, I was at a Magic the Gathering tournament a couple weekends ago, and I was talking to this dude about the Donald, and this guy seemed like he's probably never voted anything other than like a Democrat in his life. And we were talking about like Epstein and whatnot. And I was explaining about how Epstein is like, it's bigger than just, some kind of crazy pedophile ring, right? It's everything we've talked about in this podcast with like Weinstein and Robert Maxwell. And
Epstein or Weinstein? We got a lot of the Steens here.
Well, Weinstein talking about how this blackmail ring controls their scientific institutions.
Eric Weinstein. I was thinking, what's the man that ran Miramax? A different Weinstein.
Oh, yeah, Harvey.
Not him. Okay, got it. Eric Weinstein, the noted, mathematician, economist, physicist, what have you.
Yeah, and so I felt exposed getting into all this business and explaining that I had voted for the Donald because I felt like he was going to release the Epstein files, and I just can't stand the establishment. and he agreed that he couldn't stand the establishment. And ultimately, like the persuasive point seemed to be that Stephen Hawking has famously been to the pedophile island. And I was like, well, what do you think he was out there, like diddling children or something, or like like in his wheelchair, like, or do you think he was there like for some other reason? And that seemed to be a very persuasive point in the argument.
Just a little asterisk. Hawking was a fairly freakish dude, though, right? Didn't he like blow off his wife to? I think it was Einstein that married his cousin, and I think that Hawking like cravenly disposed of his first wife when he found a woman he was more interested in. Anyway, there's a little bit there with Hawking, but you're right. I mean, in his advanced state of, what was it, ALS or Parkinson's? It was some horrific disease that poor Hawking had.
One of those two, I believe.
It would have seemed like it would have disqualified him. A disease that debilitating seemed like it would have disqualified him from some of the more interesting extracurriculars going on down in Epstein's Island in the down in USVI.
Well, anyway, I rhetorically prevailed, I felt like, on my whole point here, and I felt like maybe I brought in this dude's view in some way, but then the conversation turned to how, like, I don't know, like, Trump is a racist, and I just didn't delve into the matter because, well, to your point, I was terrified of being perceived as a bigot, and it all seemed too much. Now, granted, it is a little tricky with the alligator Alcatraz and these ICE raids and whatnot. But ultimately, I don't think that wanting immigration reform makes you racist. But I mean, I don't know. I used to think there was no way that Donald would try to like cling to power. But I guess it is a little increasingly concerning. I don't know, just the way the crazy administration's going, and now I'm extremely skeptical of the whole thing since the Donald is clearly he's not going to release the Epstein files, and so I don't know. But anyway, yeah, I don't know. I just didn't want to delve into all that and sound like a racist at this Magic the Gathering tournament.
Yes, yeah. I see. I would have been in the same boat there. So who was I should know this, the author of this quote, but who was it that said that it's either the choices is between socialism and barbarism? It's going to be one of these, like Lenin or someone like that, or Rosa Luxemburg, someone from the early part of the late 1800s, early 19, one of these classic socialist types. But it really is like there either we implicate the people who are actually destroying this economy, like the upper class. Right? There is a class war on that has to be cloaked, right, in order to be successfully prosecuted. Or it doesn't have to be. It's just much easier for the wealthy 1% or 0.1% to abscond with the rest of our wealth if the rest of us aren't aware that the fleecing is going on, right? So the class war has to be, hidden, and like but meanwhile, economic conditions are deteriorating markedly, right? Everyone's quality of life is going down, right? All of our money buys less and less with respect to rent or food or what have you. And so there needs to be a story to explain the diminishing living standards, and like the one that comes from the right is always blame the immigrants for the unsettling and rapidly deteriorating situation. I mean, that's always going to be. If you're not going to implicate the wealthy, then that's always going to be the outset. And from that perspective, the Democrats are completely complicit in this, right? Because they have the same paymasters the Republican Party does, and so they support like horrific genocides in Gaza just as much as the Republicans do, right? There's one puppet master behind both puppets, is what I'm suggesting here, and that of course the trick we're looking for is for public officials to actually implicate the donor class, right? The wealthy, the 0.01%, our paymasters, their paymasters, the paymasters, the donors of the political apparatchiks that run our country. And so it's not surprising. Like, of course, there's like that's how you have to quell the popular unhappiness with deteriorating economic conditions. So I mean, I just feel like that's if you're not going to name the class war, then you're contributing to some other horrible, malignant idea, like it's super poor outsiders that are causing this issue. So like someone has to be there has to be like a scapegoat, in other words. So I mean, it's not terribly surprising that this is the direction it's the only direction left, whether you vote R or D. It's the only direction we have to go in if you're not willing to implicate the upper classes. So I mean, that's definitely a thing. The point I wanted to make with respect to bigotry is simply that, like, it's impossible to escape being a bigot, right? Everyone is a bigot to a more or lesser degree. The human we are pattern recognition creatures. Right? Our brain is running on pattern recognition software, and of course, the more you think in patterns, the less accurate your map is going to be with respect to the actual territory. Right? So, the goal is, like, as a liberal lefty type, I always thought of it like, the goal is to, like, minimize the amount, like, recognize that you have biases and correct for them, right? Not pretend that you don't have biases and other people do, right? That is the part that's the poison pill when we all got fed in the Occupy Wall Street era, when people were coming together and noticing, it's the 1% that's robbing the rest of us blind. It was patently obvious in the aftermath of the 2008 financial crisis of what was going on. The Occupy movement was a response to that, and all of these woke terminologies, you can Google Ngram them and see them popping up in 2010, 2011, just the time when the Occupy movement was getting bulldozed by the Obama administration in a coordinated, simultaneous effort to defang the movement across the country at the same time. Kind of like the Order 66 to dispense with all the Jedi at the same time, right, from Star Wars, or the first Black Friday when the Pope ordered the execution of all the Knights Templar, something like that.
Well, our reptilian overlords sure crushed the Tower of Babel that we were building based on 99%erism.
Yes, yeah, they couldn't have that. But it's working. It's amazing that it's working so well on me, on you at this Magic tournament. It's like. It's like the whole package of trying to get various aggrieved groups to compare their level of grievances and create this intersectional matrix or nexus of grievance. It's just the sort of thing that's going to get the poors arguing amongst each other, right? And not looking to see who's stealing their cookies. And I don't know.
We were having a good old, like, grievance showdown for a good 10 or 14 years there, which the Donald being elected seems to have changed the narrative, but now we're on to, I don't know, maybe things are even worse, or I don't know.
What happens in 2028? I mean, when there's no, the Donald with his boisterous personality to serve as the boogeyman that you can get one half the public to coalesce around resisting. What's going to happen? It can't be a return to pre-2016 politics where the populist rage has no outlet or has nowhere to flow to, right? I can't really picture that happening, but there is no one who can withstand the slings and arrows of the deep state like the Donald can. I mean, that dude brushing off scandals left and right. I mean, there's no one else that's that slippery or evasive. I don't know what's going to happen in post 2028 or 2028 and beyond. I don't know. Where is the populist rage going to go? That's really the big question, I think, as already mentioned, that's the big question for 2028. But hopefully by then, we, the public, will be a little bit more savvy than to fall for some of the oldest tricks in the book.
Well, I think by 2028 we'll be even further down, like, our technological, like, AI dystopia.
Yeah.
I think it was I think I heard Whitney Webb saying this, but they like don't even need, like, like an Epstein style blackmail ring anymore, because they just have access to everyone's search history through, like, Palantir and whatnot now. And so I don't know, it's crazy. So you got to do your meditation so as to not lose your mind and not worry about such things. Yes
indeed.
That's the biggest thing, right? Is in not letting the worms eat into your brain, basically, is probably the best way to survive deteriorating, society, right? I think is the key. I think if you maintain your sense of well-being, well, I mean, I think it goes to, like, everything we talk about on the System Failure podcast, whereas your sense of well-being will have a transformative effect on the world, basically, and prevent cataclysm.
Yeah,
is my theory.
So you keep your own shoes dry, kind of, and you can be helpful to others, sort of thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I feel like possibly it has a super dimensional effect on the Matrix or something that we live in. It has some kind of transformative power. And maybe that's what Jesus is all about.
Yeah, I think there's something to that. It would be very difficult for me to articulate exactly what it is, but I obviously losing your mind with the rest of the crowd not going to be helpful. You're contributing to the public problem versus adding to it. Just one final note here on social engineering vis-a-vis injecting woke ideas into the public to get them to argue with each other. I mean, that seems like a quite a conspiracy theory, right? But the famous story of second wave feminism is all you need to know to realize that that is exactly the level that like our intelligence services work on. Right? There's that famous story about Gloria Steinem admitting she worked for CIA in the 70s, had that Ms. magazine, which was a CIA cutout, meaning that she was getting funding from CIA to push this magazine. Right? And the idea was to battle communism and to create a situation where multiple household members would go to work, and then the mortgages would all be twice what they otherwise would be. Right? You can see how you can see how organizing our economy such that each household submits 2 workers to the workforce instead of 1 would be a major boon to the employers who are looking to pay as little wage as possible. And of course, you're going to double the number of workers. And overnight, by doing something like that, or in a decade, let's say double the size of the workforce, and of course, if you double the supply, you're going to see the price collapse. That's the price of labor. So it's like, and there's Dr. Harriet Fraud, one of these other mothers of feminism who you can find on the internet talking about how much she regrets not questioning that Ms. Magazine funding back in the day because of the class implications that turned out to be all tied up in it. So that level of social engineering literally exists, and it's just a question of how, realizing that this is what's happening to us in this day and age.
Well, there's this, to us, there's like this apparent obfuscation or this social engineering around, defeating 99% terrorism with, by May having our grievance showdown that we just described. But I mean, I think there's just the same thing, but really a much worse problem around like mental well-being, in that people have no idea how to prosecute the general the dark shadow of anxiety and depression that goes across the land, right?
Yeah, and most notably with respect to the technological prostheses, right, that you were mentioning earlier, the things that are making us cyborgs. I can't remember what term you used, but the way the electronics increase our ability to perceive the world, but also our brains this is all new to our brains. These are not the circumstances our brains evolved under, right? Having access to all the bad news of the world at your fingertips. There is a massive assault on all of our mental health, from the deteriorating structure of the economy to the aforementioned technological prostheses. To the horrific food that we have on. The list of things that are laying siege to all of our mental health is long and storied. To your point here.
Yeah, the number of people who just have terrible advice on this matter, I think, is pretty overwhelming, I guess. I've if you ever tried some online therapy, it's such a scam. Or these people I just don't think have anything intelligent to say on the matter, and I don't think anyone's. I don't know. Maybe online therapy has helped some people, but man, I don't know. It's just a scam.
Well, I have had my share of watching mental health professionals flounder whenever I confronted them with my cafeteria tray of problems back in the day. I remember I would go to them and be like, yeah, well, the problem is that I'm in massive student loan debt, and I really have no hope of any kind of an economic life till I'm in my 50s. And they would just be like, they just had no way to deal with that, or no way to portray that in a constructive light. It's just not something that these poor therapists had any way to handle. And I also think that you kind of need your therapist to be cleverer than you are, right? If you go to your therapist's office and you're cleverer than they are, you got a problem. Right? You need someone who's kind of better than you are to help you along. And I've never really found a therapist. I'm sure that they're out there, but I've never found one. Not that I've looked that comprehensively, but in my 2 to 3 therapists I've ever had, they were quite worthless. So you've had this same experience online. Have you ever had a therapist in real life or otherwise who you thought was helpful and setting you on the right path, who you like wanted to go back to, who you felt had some words of wisdom to help you on your way?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, well, the aforementioned Noah, the physical therapist there, I mean, his physical therapy costs like a veritable fortune. But I would say it's that, the hundreds of dollars. I think for like 10 sessions, I think it's well over $1,000 really, is like, I would say is totally worth it.
Worth it.
But I could not say that about any the money that I've invested into, any kind of, counseling or something. It's all a big waste.
Yep, that's how I feel too. It's all been a wash.
Yeah, I just feel like, no one knows how to prosecute this problem, and that's kind of how our reptilian overlords want it, because they feed off our negative energy. Or something.
Well, I'm sure that's how they want it, but I also, my heart does. It's got to be a tough job to be a therapist in the jacked up world of 2025. Imagine if you got your degree and you graduated in like 2002, and now you're in this whole new world with like Gen Zs and millennials like us coming into your office trying to, with a whole bevy of completely novel mental problems for them to try to unwind. That's got to be a tough challenge. So I do feel bad for them, on that front. It's a tall order.
Well, I imagine it's also hard to be like a doctor and people come in, they're like terribly overweight and they eat like horrendous food and live like an unhealthy lifestyle with no exercise, and they're drinking many bottles of Mountain Dew each day maybe. That is a tough nut to crack, and that is a giant industry of giving you these drugs that cause some kind of psychosis. Like suicide is one of the side effects of these drugs they prescribe.
Suicidal ideation and anal leakage. These are the two nightmare side effects you do not want. It's like I feel like my illness is far better than these horrific side effects they are always listing on the pharmaceutical adverts.
Well, the good news is we are preaching the truth here on the System Failure Podcast. We're already a half hour in, so maybe we should take a little break, and then we can regroup and prosecute a few more issues, eh?
All right, sounds good to me, Brian. We'll take a little break and be right back. And we're back. Okay. So, Brian, in the second half of the show here, I wanted to bring up our main man, or my man. I wanted to bring up this man who I've obliquely referenced on the pod before, but I don't know if I've really hashed out who Gary Stevenson is. Gary is the guy who does Gary's Economics on YouTube. Right, the name of the channel is Gary's Economics. If you've not watched it, it's outstanding. This guy, Gary Stevenson, he went to school for economics. He got hired by one of these big investment banks, flew out to Hong Kong. He's like a guy from one of the poor areas of London. He went out to Hong Kong in 2011, working for an investment bank, and he realized that, excuse me, he realized in the post-2008 world that all of that money printing that occurred in 2008 was going to blow out asset values. Essentially, that there was going to be a massive transfer of wealth from poor to rich as a result of the 2008, 2009, 2010 bailout packages. And he bet on commodity markets accordingly and made a crazy amount of money, enough so he could retire by 2016 as a super rich guy. And what he decided to do, you can go on his YouTube channel and listen to him talk about these things. His videos are great because it's just him sitting at his kitchen table with a chunky sweater on and a mug of coffee talking about these things. And he talks about the mental, we were just talking about mental health in the first half. He talks about the mental struggles he went through, first realizing the economy is going to collapse, that it's a mathematical guarantee. And then he struggled with making millions of dollars off of that. What do you do if you realize the economy is going to collapse? Make a few trades, and get rich. How do you emotionally deal with that? If you come from one of these, already wealthy families, if you come from the elite, maybe you don't care. But if you come from one of these seedy, poor neighborhoods around London, all your friends, everyone all these people are doomed. How do you feel good about this? So what was Gary's strategy? It's great stuff. He went back to school at the London School of Economics for his master's degree, and then he started this YouTube channel and wrote a book about the coming economic collapse, which you can go online and buy. The book became a huge bestseller over in the UK. It was number 1 on Amazon for who knows how long. And he used that to create this massive YouTube channel, which very simply explains the economic situation over and over and over again in the simplest possible terms that we're facing this massive economic collapse. And the dude is super credible because he's made a bunch of money on this. Like, he made the predictions. They've all come true. He's made even more money in the post-COVID era, right? It's like, it's happening. And his main contention here, excuse me, his main contention is that wealth inequality is what's driving up asset prices, right? The housing prices are all going up because we don't tax the wealthy enough, right? In other words, extra cash is filling up in the pockets of the super wealthy since the 80s, since the tax cut era of like Reagan and Thatcher. And the idea of trickle-down economics, of course, always a scam. It just increased the wealth of the top 1%, the top 0.01% at the rest of our expense. And the result of the wealthy elite, if the people who make their money with assets have too much money, you will see an asset price explosion. Right? And if you can imagine, like, if you installed heavy taxes on the rich, right? Just punishing taxes on the rich, they would have to begin selling off assets to pay the tax bills, right? And you would see asset fire sales, the price of assets coming down. So everyone should check out Gary's Economics. What he's doing is he on his channel, he'll say things like, if you have a podcast or a newsletter, kindly repeat these ideas, so that we can get the idea out there. His movement has already made such waves over in the UK that he is now getting calls from like members of the Labour Party. As our system failure listeners may or may not be aware, for the first time since like 1903 or something, both the Labour and the Conservative, the Tory party in England, are collapsing. The ruling government will not be from one of those two parties. Looks like it's going to go to Nigel Farage's far-right party, right? Blame the foreigners, right? Do a Brexit. This is the Brexit guy, Nigel Farage, right? So that's what's happening over there. And so he's got the Labour PMs trying to contact, because they're losing their constituency. And so he's got the people from Whitehall, requesting meetings from him. And he'll talk about it on the pod. Should I take this meeting? Is it worth meeting with the PMs? It's fascinating stuff. So if y'all are not already subscribed to Gary's Economics, I highly recommend you point your browser to the YouTube, type in Gary's Economics, and hit subscribe. You shan't regret it. It's also a podcast for those who like to consume, and like me, who like to consume podcasts versus videos.
Does he have a charming British accent?
He sounds like Russell Brand, right? He's got that working class London accent. Yeah, so that's always fun to listen to, of course. Very good at explaining stuff. I highly admire this man. He's doing the Lord's work over there in the UK. Wanted to bring up Gary's Economics today. Well, it fit in nicely with our discussion at the first half, but he had this idea that really stuck with me, so I just want to convey this idea. You've heard me on this podcast reference the United Way article, Brian, that states that from a couple years back, from 23, that states that there are 28 vacant homes in America for every single homeless person, and you'll see it all over Reddit and everywhere else, that the problem we're facing here is not enough home construction. We need to create more demand. We need to create more supply to meet the demand we have so that prices can come down. Surely you've heard this argument.
Yes. And, we've pulled up that United Way article on this very podcast before. It seems hard to fathom, but, this article does exist, and that is, in fact, what it says, surprisingly enough.
I have debated folks on Reddit about this point, and the response you'll get is, well, some of those houses aren't really vacant, right? They're rich people's homes. They're rich people's summer homes, so they're not technically vacant. And you're like, yeah, the issue here is Gary's Economics Gary makes the point, and I really like this one, that it's all it doesn't matter how many houses you build if you continue to let the wealthy, this one minority in society, the people who make their money off assets versus the people who work, like you and me. If you make your income from assets, well, his point is simply that it doesn't matter how many houses you build, all of the new construction will get gobbled up by those people who already have assets, right? That's how we loan money. The banks will give you a loan for a house if you already have another house to put down, right? So if you already have collateral, then you get access to the new credit. People who are making unsecured loan not gonna be able to compete in that environment. So the idea is simply this: you can see it if you look at other assets, right? It's not just the price of housing that has gone up exponentially. That's just one asset class. The price of stocks have gone up crazily. The price of fine art, the price of classic automobiles. Everything that's an asset has been blown up in price for the specific reason that we don't collect the taxes from the rich that we used to and that we need to maintain economic balance. So what's happening here is essentially the wealthy are buying all of our homes out from under us, and the increased prices are just wealthy people outbidding regular people for how that's what the asset price appreciation is. Love that point. I think it's a great one.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might be famed sports commentator Colin Cowherd who made this point, but to be a billionaire, it's just like everywhere you go, everything is free, is what it means.
Yeah. Yes.
And so, yeah, I mean, like, what else are you going to spend your money on besides, like, assets? I mean, there's no point in, I mean, you can only buy so much Taco Bell, I guess.
I'm going to steal one of Gary's lines here and be like, saying that the problem with housing is a zoning issues and the lack of supply would be like going to the grocery store and seeing that the price of coffee has gone up exponentially and thinking that the problem is with the supply and demand in the coffee market, not looking at the rest of the groceries in the grocery store going, oh, all the other prices are going up too. It would be silly to spend time analyzing analyzing the peculiarities of the coffee market when all the groceries are going up in price, right? The issue here is not with the availability of coffee. What we have is a massive, slow-moving economic collapse that's moving faster and faster with each passing day. So,
well, I mean, obviously, increasing the supply you would have like some kind of effect, but it's sure. Like it doesn't. That argument doesn't address the fundamental systemic situation we got going on here.
Yeah, you could go out and go to all kinds of trouble to alter the coffee market. You know, it's not like the price of coffee wouldn't go down if you suddenly flooded the supermarket with new coffee, you know, but in the long run, it's not going to solve the fundamental issue, and that's that the price of everything is going up and up and up. Love this stuff. Highly recommend Gary's Economics. If you like system failure, you're going to love Gary. He's got the academic credentials and the track record trading in the commodity markets to back him up, which is awesome. I wish I had some success in the commodity markets to make me seem like prescient. Yeah, man, Gary's Economics, you can't go wrong.
Well, you got to wonder like how much of our economic problem is just, you know, the baby boomer glut, you know, going down the ostrich's neck. And when we finally get to the other side of that and, you know, we're past like the post-World War II era where just the plan, like every other country, is destroyed. I think Dave Smith was just making this point on maybe Joe Rogan today, in fact.
But I saw these popped up, but I didn't listen to them yet.
I mean, if every other country is destroyed, it kind of makes sense if you're, you know, the United States to go and, you know, start wars or take all the property that you can, and then we're kind of still living in the legacy of that era.
Okay. I was wondering what you meant by the boomer lump working its way down the ostrich's neck there.
Well, and then there's just other, like, we cater to this demographic. We have to make sure the price of homes keeps going up, and we're just kind of, and they're going to, like, you know, on Breaking Points, they were talking about, like, Florida is trying to take away property taxes.
Yeah,
there's already no income taxes, which is just a crazy subsidy for boomers, basically, who already have houses, and is a tax on everyone else.
Yeah. I heard Sagar's rant about this, about relieving about redistributing wealth from young to poor, from young to old. And it does seem like a perversion of the natural order where people, you know, make babies and sacrifice. Maybe you sacrifice on behalf of your family or your community. So the young people that are a part of those, your family, your community, can then go on to be successful to make sacrifices on behalf of the next generation. All right, rounding up the wealth of the young and awarding it to the old is an abomination. An abomination, you know, of the natural order.
Well, it's easy to do if that is like the demographic, right? That like dominates society. Well, if you're living in some kind of democracy, well, that is what's going to happen. Yeah, so
the old people vote, right? Isn't that so? If you can buy them off, you can keep the oligarchy running for a few more precious years, even while the young people backslide into one mental health crisis after another.
Yeah, well, you know, Gen Xers and millennials and Gen Zers, you know, we're all relatively in the same economic boat. Yeah, I mean, you see these people who are like 50 and 60, you know, they're working at, you know, Chili's or whatever, like some wretched job. Trying to make money that way. And so, yeah, once we get through this glut, it'll probably things will improve, would be my prediction.
On last week's podcast, I was talking about procrastination and how maybe it's built into the human DNA. I was bringing up the cheetah sitting in the upper branches of the baobab tree, not moving a muscle all day long, only burning calories when it's time to hunt, and then it's hot. You don't want to exhaust yourself more than you have. So we have a parsimony of calories that being lazy helps us not to burn. You won't burn unnecessary calories if you're lazy. In that sense, being lazy can be adaptive from an evolutionary standpoint, right? So it does seem like we have to wake up as a society, realize, who's robbing us here, and correct it with the appropriate tax policy. And it's like we talked about, Star Wars last week, and how it's the narrative that's most pleasing to the human mind is the one where the bad guys almost win, but then the good guys pull it all out at the very end. I hope that's what we're living through. I hope it's not just going to be economic dysfunction and collapse, and with no political means of egress whatsoever. I don't think that will be the case, but it's sure one hell of an interesting time to be living through, eh?
Oh yeah.
What do you think, Brian? Do you think that the nature of the human subconscious is such that we can all wake up, listen to Gary's economics podcast, advocate for the proper, the tax remedy that we need, go back to some, 1950s, 60s, 70s tax structure where the upper tax brackets just got hosed? Do you think that it doesn't look promising? I mean, when you survey the people or think about some of these folks, you were talking about the Magic tournament earlier, doesn't give me a lot of hope. The level of discourse, not great. It's heartbreaking when you see like a post on the gram or Facebook, someone saying, if you are a Donald supporter, just unfriend me now. Oh, you hate to see that. It's like, it's like the oligarchy has drawn a chalk outline of a body on the sidewalk, and we're rushing to lie down into it, and lie down and match the outline. It's like, oh, you hate to see it.
Well, the aforementioned boomer glut is maybe a cause of optimism, but I'll answer your question with a question. Like, how do you think this whole business of UFOs plays into this? Like what does it mean if there really is like a breakaway civilization with access to like unlimited energy and like space and/or time travel? Like, how does that all play in?
Well, I think that there's a lot going on here that our line of sight is cut off from. I always talk about it in terms of structures of power over and above the ones we think that we're electing into. And so, yeah, I think that the best guess I have is, Eric Weinstein's idea that physics has been taken over. It's been pushed into the back room of intelligence services and like real science, right? And it's not something that makes no sense, right? You even think about like exploding the technology to create an atomic bomb, right? This is dangerous technology. They're not that hard to build. And you can imagine, the heads of intelligence services sitting in a smoky room in the 1950s going, yeah, we have to get control of physics. We can't have public physics, because it's extremely dangerous. I don't know. I think that the lights in the sky are related to that, and related to the bizarre old stories of lights in the sky, like the Nuremberg woodcutting from the 16th century, or the story of Ezekiel and the wheel in the sky, or the appearance of the Cairo before Constantine, just before the Battle of Mulvaney. What the hell is the name of the bridge? I forgot the name. It's like Mulvaney Bridge or something like that. I mean, so yeah, I think that. I think all that figures in heavily. I do, yeah. It's like it's like you mentioned. There's a matrix, like a mini matrix, where people are fooled into fighting with each other over identity politics instead of recognizing the true economic situation that we're in. And then there's a big matrix where, yeah, we are living in some kind of a lower dimensional slice of a higher dimensional reality we can't directly perceive, but we come up in contact with that extra dimensional reality when you run physics experiments, or when you run certain types of calculus equations. You can see in the calculus equations imply the existence of dimensions that we can't directly experience. So I have no idea, to answer your question with a shrug. I got no idea exactly what's going on, but I think it's something in that realm.
Yeah, that compartmentalization goes back to like the Manhattan Project.
Yes, yeah.
And then if you listen to like Bob Lazar talk about the research he took part in at S4, aka Area 51, compartmentalization was essential in researching these UFOs because no one got the whole picture. And that compartmentalization and who is talking about this? Yeah, like all these scientists, no one gets like the broad picture anymore. Everyone's just like specializes on a very small part of the big picture. And it makes everyone easy to control. And anyway, so I don't know how that all bodes for our future. That's a tough question to answer with our limited view of things.
I always like to system failure. I mean, I think about the fracturing of reality itself that happened during the last two major economic collapses in Western civilization. The first one is obvious. Everyone knows that the collapse of the medieval economy, the collapse of church authority, the Protestant Reformation, the Renaissance. Like everyone knows that reality was the quintessential example, of course, is the discovering that the Earth is in orbit around the sun rather than vice versa. Right? It's like the classic inversion. The church had insisted upon the Aristotelian or geocentric model of the solar system, only to have that disproven by a burgeoning scientific revolution. So, like the reality that people thought they lived in prior to the scientific revolution was like that of Dante. We're of like concentric spheres, and we're ascending and descending between these concentric spheres, and it was a very Christian conception, of reality. But all that is like shattered, right? We went from thinking ourselves as these people who are in the pre-season for the real life, the next life, the afterlife, the kingdom of heaven, to thinking that our limited mortal existence is all we have, and our cosmology fundamentally shifted from a Platonic cosmology of parallel levels that you can vertically move up and down between to the scientific cosmology we're all familiar with today. So I think it's beyond accurate to say that reality crumbled and collapsed for the people of the late Middle Ages and the early modern period. The other example I love to bring up is that of Filippo Brunelleschi, the man who designed the Duomo of Florence, right? This man figured out perspective, right? It was like before that, people didn't realize that. You could see it, but painters hadn't reproduced it on the canvas. The idea that parallel lines converge to a single point on the horizon, right? Perspective. I love to talk about walking through the city of Florence, and you can see Donatello's various sculptures and friezes. A frieze is like it's a kind of a sculpture, kind of a painting. It's kind of a raised relief. Is that the right word? I think that's right. Whatever the case may be, you can see where Donatello started with medieval total lack of perspective and finished his career with his scenes popping, off of the stone, the piece of stone that he's worked on, because he's incorporated perspective. It's like that's a fundamental shift in the reality you thought that you were living in, right? When realizing, parallel lines do converge at a single point on the horizon. Another example, of course, is that for the people of Rome, the Roman Empire, right? I mean, for them, their reality completely shattered. They went from polytheism to like Christianity. I mean, that's an insane revision in cosmology. You can just leave it there. But there's many things about what happened in Rome that involved a change in people's perceived realities. The burgeoning of alternative Platonic ideas like Gnosticism or Hermeticism is a case in point in 2nd and 3rd century Alexandria. So I think that this is a long way of saying that our conception of reality is going to just collapse with the economy, because that's what always happens. So that's what we should be looking forward to, and I'm sure the lights in the sky figure into that somehow, Brian.
I mean, if we are to become some kind of interstellar or interdimensional or time-traveling society or something, naturally, you would expect a radical departure from our current paradigm, eh?
Yes, yeah. I think that the intel services are like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dike, right, holding back the flood. They've got alternative physics. They know about pedophile rings and blackmail networks. I mean, they're aware of what's going on to a degree that would horrify the rest of us.
I think maybe it's Kurt Metzger who says this, but in the Star Trek lore, right? I mean, society gets annihilated before they or finally become like a spacefaring civilization out there to spread peace, basically.
If I remember my Star Wars time, we should have
Star Trek.
So if I remember my Star Trek timeline correctly, we should have our resident libertarian here to talk about this because he's a Star Wars fan. I can't quite, but in my memory serves, it's the Clone Wars in the 90s, right? This is where Khan Noonien Singh comes from. He's a genetically created perfect warrior, and he got banished from Earth on board his ship, the Botany Bay, and that's where the Enterprise finds him centuries. They put him in the hypersleep, him and his band of genetically engineered mercenaries. The Enterprise stumbles across this sleeper ship in the 23rd century, unthaws the people unknowing what they are, and they take over the Enterprise because they're superior in every way to the humans, even in the 22nd.
Is it supposed to be cloning like in the 1990s?
Yes.
Is that what we're talking about?
And then there's a massive nuclear war in the early 2000s that decimates humankind, and it's from that we come together as a species, invent warp drive in the 2050s, something like that, and then are promptly visited by the Vulcans who make first contact. That's the story. So you're saying Metzger is talking about this and how, according to Star Wars, we had to go through through a lot of violence. According to Star Trek, we had to go through a lot of violence to get to like the space communism that everyone envies on the show.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I think if the topic is aliens, we got to talk about Mr. Jesse Michaels, his American Alchemy YouTube channel. In the video he posted 2-3 weeks ago about his trip down to Peru. You had a chance to watch the whole thing. You're the one that recommended this to me, Brian, so I'm assuming you watched it.
I sure did.
Push. Yeah. So if we could just make a long story short here, essentially what's happened is Mr. Michaels took his HD video camera down to Peru, and he got a chance to look at some of these supposed bodies of some of these tridactyl remains that they have down there of aliens that match exactly the description of the aliens from that 2022 documentary Moment of Contact, which you may recall. This is the one about the incident in Varginha, Brazil, from 1996, where like this alien spacecraft like crashed into this tiny town. It's Virginia, right? This is the Portuguese version of Virginia. Varginha, this thing crashes, and then like one or two of these tridactyl aliens is like survive the wreckage and is walking around all over town. And there's just scores and scores and scores of people who have like seen this and acknowledged it. So it's really hard to pretend it's some mass delusion or something like that. Furthermore, there's the man who physically contacted this alien, right? Picked the remains up. It was like discovered. He picked the remains up. He had physically touched it, and he died of some horrific disease a day or two later that no one could figure out what was causing him to crash, and that was it for him.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of documentaries on this thing are, that one about Virginia there. I mean, ultimately, it's a lot of people's accounts, and I mean, it's a pretty compelling presentation because there's just a lot of accounts, a lot of stories that support that something mind-blowing happened in Virginia, Peru there.
Yeah, disparate accounts from people, different, regular people, little girls and their mother who were living near the incident, police people, politics, everyone in this town, like this is something that they all had some kind of contact with.
Yeah, but now this Jesse Michaels presentation, though, this is like a real life episode of the X-Files. Yeah. These tridactyl beings that they went and did like X-rays and MRIs of it's absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah. So just to spill the beans, there they have a couple of samples. One of them is pregnant. It's got a mini tridactyl inside of it. All right, and then there's another one that has some kind of a metal implant on its brainstem, or it has some kind of a metal prosthesis or something like that. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it. Am I leaving anything out here? I think maybe the only detail to mention is that what happened to the Varginha craft and aliens is that the U.S. Air Force took them away, and that was the last anyone saw of them. Bizarre. Why would our Air Force have any jurisdiction? Unclear to me. But that's what they say on the documentary. So I guess the story down in Peru is that the authorities there are involved in a cover-up of these bizarre remains, right? Is that basically the takeaway you got from the show? From Jesse Michaels' American Alchemy documentary?
The takeaway I got is that, these tridactyls are, they're like a real thing. They pretty obviously tridactyl biological organisms of some kind. And just looking at these things, it's just like seeing this thing on YouTube is just like absolutely wild. It's incredibly real is what I would say about it. It's just really hard to fathom that this would be like some kind of fake.
It could be, though. I mean, it could all be disinfo. I don't know. I don't know the man that well behind the Moment of Contact documentary, but supposedly he has another one coming out that's far more shocking. But Jesse Michaels is someone I've been listening to for years. He used to be the producer of Eric Weinstein's The Portal podcast. I feel like he's reasonably trustworthy. Maybe he's having the wool pulled over his eyes, but that would mean that these mummies that he filmed were faked somehow.
Well, if you look at the MRI scans of these mummies, it's not like, if you look at the bone structure, it's not like, they somehow took like a five-fingered being and chopped off the thumb and pinky. Yes, you can just tell by the bone structure. Like, the fingers are just so like long, and obviously it's not. It is not like an altered human being. And so, I mean, what it means is that either there was some kind of tridactyl species on this earth, or that there's some kind of visitors, not from this earth. And those would, the apparent possibilities from the documentary.
Yeah. It's like you're left at the same crossroads as you are with the Commander David Fravor testimony, right? It's like, okay, is this some kind of bizarre fakery? Is Commander Fravor mistaken? But then you're like, well, why is it that, like, when the lights appear in the skies over New Jersey, why is it that all the military bases are they're responding as if they have no idea what this thing is? It really, the idea that it's not aliens doesn't really explain, the idea that it could all be a hoax isn't satisfactory or explanatory either. There's just way too much going on. It just would be really difficult to pull off this level of hoax. It just doesn't. Neither aliens nor not aliens, is fully satisfactory here. It's a crazy place to be in.
I just feel like it's just like a pinnacle moment of YouTube, this documentary coming out. It's just pretty sensational. It's just unbelievable what you're looking at, and it's the sort of thing. It would be like if on one of these these ghost TV shows, if they actually like found footage of the ghost, or if the ghost like actually appeared somehow and they proved it was real, or if on one of these searches for Bigfoot, if they like actually found Bigfoot,
that actual footage, then you'd be where we're at now, being okay, are we looking at a hoax, or is reality not what we assumed or thought that it was? I mean, reality can't be what we think it is. Clearly we're going to be missing something, but man, absolutely wild. So I wanted to just bring up briefly Duncan Trussell's family, recent Duncan Trussell family hour with Mitch Horowitz, the prolific author who writes about magic and things like that. You remember Mitch Horowitz? He's got that nasally voice.
Yeah, I think I listened to Mitch Horowitz's last episode on Duncan Trussell, but I have not heard this one yet.
I just wanted to bring this up because they talked about astral projection. And I just wonder what you think of this, Brian. According to Trussell, this guy, there's this man, Dr. Robert Monroe. He was an American radio broadcasting executive who became known for his ideas about altered states of consciousness back in like the 70s. He wrote a book called Journeys Out of the Body, and he started the Monroe Institute, which is still around to this day. And you can download an app of the Monroe Institute. The Monroe Institute's app is called Expand, and apparently it will train you to astral project. Now, I have to go to New Jersey this week. I'm not going to be able to try out this app this week, but I'm like, what are the chances that this really works? Here's a little snippet. In 1994, this is from Wikipedia. In 1994, a front-page article in the Wall Street Journal reported confirmation from the former director of the Intelligence and Security Command of the U.S. Army sending personnel to the Institute. It also stated that the opinion of the head of the Zen Buddhist temple in Vancouver, British Columbia, that, quote, gateway students can reach meditation states in a week that took me 30 years of sitting. I mean, there is like this idea that the ego is not but the reflection of your physical body in the mind, like in the mirror of consciousness. The reflection of your body is your estimation of yourself, and that kind of ends at what you perceive the borders of your body to be. Right? So there's no reason that mind should be localized in the brain, in the head, in the body, necessarily. So that to me makes me think maybe there is something to this astral projection business. What is beyond dispute is that the intelligence and the intelligence services and the military take this stuff deadly seriously, to the point where they're sending people off to this Monroe Institute. So yeah, it's another layer of like what is really going on here. But apparently, in declassified documents from the 70s, remote viewers. Hal Puthoff talked about this on a Joe Rogan Experience, maybe back in the spring, maybe 3-4 months ago. But apparently, you can read it in declassified documents. Apparently, astral projection, astral viewing had real success with pinpointing details of like Russian military installations. Like it actually has a practical application. It's so crazy.
Yeah, someone like found like this. They trained like the secretary to do it, and like they found like this Russian plane like in the Congo or something, like way out in the middle of nowhere. That's like a famous story.
This is a story put off told, I think.
Yeah, well, what you were saying there about the ego being like the body, but in your mind, yeah, I mean, there's like the physical space that we negotiate, and it just kind of goes back to what I was saying before about the depression or whatever in the negative energy ball. Like
That's a good callback.
The negative energy ball is like this thing that you have to negotiate in just the pathways of how your brain operates. And so, I mean, I just totally agree that your mind is like negotiating a space also. And so, I mean, I guess I could totally see. I mean, it sounds plausible. It's quite a step further than using meditation to sort of digest this energy ball.
Is it that different? I wonder. Or I'm curious to try out this app. I'm wondering how much daylight there is between meditation and this supposed astral projection. But I'm picking up what you're putting down. What you're saying makes sense.
Does this Monroe thing cost money?
That's a great idea. I did see it's available on the App Store. I checked it. I didn't download it or try to interact with it. That's going to have to be a homework assignment for a future system failure podcast.
Yes. And does astral projection mean like locating a Russian plane in the Congo, or does it mean like manifesting something into this material realm? Like what are we talking about?
Astral
here?
projection, I think, literally means realizing that length, width, and height, and time also, but just for astral projection purposes, length, width, and height are mental constructs and not fundamental properties of the universe. They're just an overlay we're putting on this universe, right? It's the way that we perceive a dimension. Length, width, height, you measure with your ruler, and then on fourth dimension, the temporal dimension you measure with the stopwatch, right? There's really the stopwatch and the rulers. These are like the same sorts of things, right? There's a lot of similarities between temporal and physical dimensions to the point that Einstein proposed that they're related, right there. It's like Einstein's theory of relativity is essentially that like the faster I'm driving, like east-west, the slower I'm moving north-south, right? Just makes sense. If I'm driving due east, I'm flying from an east-west perspective, but I'm making no progress from a north-south perspective. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like when you move through space, the faster you move through space, the slower you move through time. And the slower you move through time, the faster you move through space, right? So there's like a certain amount of motion you can do, and you can devote all that motion to the temporal dimension, or you can devote all that motion to the physical dimension, or some combination of the two. But it's the same string. You're pulling on the same string from either direction there.
Is it like saying that the distance to Boston is 100 miles or like 2 hours?
Very, very similar. Yes, you got it. So yeah, man, bizarre stuff. I just had one final thought on all this madness. Right? We talked about Platonism and the allegory of the cave last week, and the Platonic suggestion that something is tunneling from the outside of the cave in. Right? It's not just that we're tunneling out or struggling out. Something is beckoning us, winking at us, encouraging us along our route.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Maybe that thing is an incongruous reality, right? So if we're like, wow, man, on the one hand, this alien business is completely crazy. But on the other hand, Commander David Fravor is the most sober guy I've ever heard talk. The dude sounds like a consummate professional. He's a commander, and he's a naval aviator, and the dude's credentials are impeccable, immaculate. Maybe the incongruous reality is the thing that beckons us, and lets us know that the Matrix is a matrix, lets us know that it's false, because you realize, if we can prove contradictory things, maybe that's the mechanism by which we can all escape the matrix. Like if it turns out that aliens are both real and not real, or like something like that. It's like if reality is fake, there's no reason. If it's a construct, there's no reason why it has to be congruent, right? You wouldn't be shocked if something impossible happened in a video game because you recognize that it's a construct, right? So I'm just wondering, maybe incongruent reality explains this. Maybe there really are tridactyl beings in Peru. But maybe, you know, but maybe also maybe it's also you know, not true at the same time. And so that's why we seem to have two conflicting stories that we can't reconcile with each other going on at the same time.
Well, I'm not sure that like objective reality is really like a thing. It's not like there's some. It's not like we're all just like blind, like feeling an elephant. I mean, it's more like we're all contributing to a picture of reality, but there's not necessarily like an elephant underneath it, if that makes sense. I can buy that.
I see what you're saying, but I think the question of an objective reality is actually a different discussion. Well, the question is this objective reality, or is objective reality something else we can't grok, we can't experience, we can't sense?
Well, maybe what I'm trying to say is it's more like we're all creating this thing that could turn out to be an elephant, or it could turn out to be something else, and it's not necessarily defined until it's understood.
Yeah, it's not predefined. It has to be. It has to come into reality and be processed. And but if it's possible for two contradictory things to be pulled into reality at once, right? That could be a powerful signal that you are in a matrix. And so I'm just speculating that maybe all this bizarre stuff that we've talked about, astral projections and aliens, is really something outside the cave beckoning us to grope our way towards the light. I got no real idea. It's just a fun idea. I got no reason to think that's the case. But it would be. It might be one explanation for all this madness that's coming out.
All right. Well, we'll have to at least find out like what they mean by astral projection and try to understand like what that means. I think with respect to this app, to the Monroe Institute, I think it's just remote viewing. So you would be able to, gain a three-dimensional impression of some place without physically being there. That's what I think. I really am just going off what Trussell and Horowitz were on about on that Duncan Trussell Family Hour a week or two ago. So I just thought it fit in with the bizarre Jesse Michaels American Alchemy tridactyl alien thing. All right.
Whoosh. Well, I think that we have been through enough mind-bending rounds here, Brian. I think we can go ahead and call it a show for today. I always take this opportunity to invite you, the valued System Failure listener, to point your browser window to systemfailure.org. There, you can read the weekly essays written by me. You can sign up to receive those essays in your email inbox each and every Sunday morning. That way, you'll never have to worry about missing one. And furthermore, if you want to get in touch with either Brian or myself, you can accomplish that mighty feat over on the About page by clicking on the appropriate name. And with that, we bid you all a fantastic week. I'll be back on Thursday with the Quickie this week, and then on Monday, Brian and I will be back with another regularly scheduled like you just heard.
All right, see you.